right, a pleasant good morning. Once again, you're on Caribbean Country 93.5, and again, this is a special show I'm having here with Frankie Johnson today. I'm a little bit overwhelmed only because, this is something that I really enjoy doing. We're going to have one of the individuals, Franklin Campbell. He'll be out, I believe he's out at Hess at this point, or we call it Lime Tree.
Lime Tree, yeah.
Okay, and then Rupert Lewis is here in the studio. I gave you a challenge, and, I learned not to challenge you because you deliver, okay? Now, out there, I can't endorse anybody. However, when you see somebody, particularly in this area, again, and we're talking about crime and crime prevention, and more importantly, rehabilitation, because this revolving door routine really has not served us in the Virgin Islands any good. This is something that I want you to take into consideration because along with WAPA and along with the GRS, probably one of the major concerns is crime. And again, the revolving door we want to not get to be too tempted with. Frankie, talk to me first of all. You can I know his name, but you can introduce us again to our guest here, who did have a record. Okay,
yep.
However, he's seen the light and so on and so forth. The light has seen him. How's that sound? But talk to me a little bit.
Good morning, Eric. How are you doing?
Good morning.
Good morning to your listening audience. It's a pleasure to be here today again.
Sure.
And as you said, I'm the boss, and once you challenge, I'm going to prove you different, and I'm going to prove you that the job can be done.
Right.
I'm a candidate for the 34th legislature, and I'm showing that we have to pay attention that crime in two folds. Not just waiting to incarcerate them, we have to make sure we do prevention.
Correct.
And even after prevention, those that might have made a mistake,
right.
Once they come to the facility, you have to find a way for programs to get them adjusted and back into the community. And today I brought Mr. Rupert Lewis, a gentleman who I met that the first time we met, it wasn't a pleasant meeting. It sure wasn't. I met him over at the St. Thomas complex. And at the first day that we met, both of us were ready to go to each other through.
Well, why was that? Was there a confrontation or what? In other words, he didn't like the way you looked and you didn't like the way he looked?
Well, at the time, I guess I was a young, energetic person in the bureau, and he was a young guy just walking into the facility.
I can appreciate it. I can understand why you didn't like him.
So I guess I heard him chatting away, and I said, give me a minute with this guy in the cell block, I said, no, Frankie, leave that alone. And then he happened to be come over to St. Croix.
Yeah.
And when he came over, it was a different person. I can see a young man that was willing to try to make a difference in his life. And me having that opportunity with the program, I got him involved in which he came wanting to get involved in the program.
Sure.
And the first program he started out with me was that program where we went to the schools.
I got you.
And we did a lot of mentoring, and he was my muscle guy in that program.
All right.
I would pick a guy out. I said, we used to call him Rambo then. I said, Rambo, that guy in the second seat, go right up next to him, pick him up and bring him on stage.
Yeah.
And he would go and come. You ain't listening, come.
Yeah.
And I know those guys were young men, younger children, and I think some of them got shook out of the boots. But I assure you, Alan,
yeah,
that we made a difference in a lot of young men's lives with
sure.
that program. And we redirect them. And, I'm not going to talk too much. I'm going to let Mr. Lewis talk about a bit of his experience with that program.
Sure.
And then the second part, he was on a work detail program.
I got you.
And he started a work detail program at the Department of Agriculture. And again, he's going to speak about where that led him to. He now have a full-time job at the Department of Agriculture, been there for some 16 years plus.
Right.
But he's graduated through the rank from where he started to where he is. So without any hold up, let me introduce Mr. Rupert Lewis to the audience, someone that
sure.
I met that I really admire for him just realizing his mistakes, taking the opportunity when they were there,
yep.
and changing around his life and doing a good job down to the department. He's recognized more than once to the Bureau Department of Agriculture. So,
Rupert, let me ask you the first question. There always seems to be, and without getting too probing in your past, one of the biggest problems that generally takes place is a resistance to accept authority and instructions. In other words, we can go back in many respects to either a broken home, a breakdown of the family unit and family structure. But, if he is very authoritative and you're in St. Thomas and he's starting to tell you what the hell to do, obviously you're not going to be listening to him, are you?
Well, at that point in time.
No, I'm saying in that point in time, you don't think he's cute.
Yeah. I wouldn't.
So you're like two porcupines making love very carefully. All
There
right.
you
So
go.
So why do you think again that is? Because we're talking about apprehension and again crime prevention, which again Frankie is always looking to avoid you getting into that situation, but. We're talking about this antagonism and what takes place. Usually a crime commits either, a broken home situation where you have a propensity to do that, fighting with reference to a female, drugs, or money. Why, again, that situation where, you just, people will kill somebody just at the drop of a hat?
Yeah, I know, and that's a toughie, but
Yeah.
I'll try my best.
No, try your
But,
best. Educate me. No, I'm serious.
Okay, it's really like the time that I grew up in. I was born in the 60s, so the time was different then.
Yes, it
to
is.
now.
Sure.
So back then, we get into an argument, it'll be more like a fight. You gotta go home, I gotta go home, we talk about it later. We squash that, we got to play marble again, we got to
Yeah.
shoot birds. Time have changed, and we have to accept that.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no getting around it, there's no going around it, we just have to accept it. The only problem that I see with this generation is that there seems to be a lack of communication. And when I say communication, I'm speaking about people that can make a difference
In their life, yeah.
tend to turn a blind eye or a deaf ear, meaning that God gave us 2 ears, 1 mouth.
Yeah.
There's a reason for that.
Right.
We are supposed to listen more than we talk.
Right.
We're not listening to the youths.
Sure.
We're not listening. We come out, we campaign, we say all kind of stuff. But then when we get in, we drive by with the windows up and we wouldn't stop and communicate. 'Cause that's
Yeah.
the key to everything.
Sure.
Because if we cannot communicate, then we cannot solve no problem. So communication is the key. Now
Yeah, but let me, you and I are going to have a discussion. Generally, that communication skill starts at home. And again, if you have second and third generation where a family has been challenged, usually what I tell a young lady, go for a nerd. Don't go for the bling bling, the BMW and whatever, okay? So what you do is you get that repeat situation, whether you had the experience like I did when I grew up. We used to gather around a kitchen table and we would eat. We weren't running out to McDonald's because, you're talking about BC. I go back further than you. But that is no more. So when you're speaking of communications, you're absolutely correct. So many of these youngsters have the wiring,
right.
but they don't have, again, the social skills. And again, there is an awkwardness. And of course, if they're not getting that affection at home, they're going to either become part of a gang or the group. And to become part of the group, you have to do something bad, right?
There you go. There you
Yeah.
go. But
Go ahead.
we can change that
Talk to me.
by simply applying ourselves to them.
Yes.
Meaning that,
Fill the vacuum.
right. So instead of passing by in your car with your windows up, stop.
Right.
Get out your car. They're not going to shoot you. They're not going to kill you. Get out your car and communicate with them. Let them know. Hear
Right.
them.
Sure.
Hear the concern. Because maybe mommy is too busy at work, daddy don't have the time, so there's nobody listening to them.
Right.
They need to be heard.
Sure.
And I feel in my heart that that can happen and that can change them into something
Well, you're
different.
right. The natural tendency is to shun them, okay? And, for your information, I live in a combat zone. I live between red brick and water gun. If I don't hear guns going off at night, I can't sleep. In other words, what I'm trying to say to you is my neighborhood is probably one of the roughest neighborhoods in the Virgin Islands. In the last 10 years, we've probably had 6 murders in that area. However, there are very, very nice families in that neighborhood and this and that. And I do talk to the guys. I mean, I'm not afraid of them. I'm part of the neighborhood, for God's sake.
Well known, man.
Well, I'm known down there. And again, but I don't put up with any crap with any of them
We know
either.
that.
You know what I mean? So
It's respect.
Yes, but they are really trying to reach out. We don't give them any alternatives, okay, in life. And again, when they come in and they're handicapped to start with, and we're not talking about physically,
Right.
we're talking about emotionally, again, even if you grow up under the best set of circumstances, and wealth has nothing to do with it, okay?
Right, of course not.
It does contribute to it
Yeah, they
because we have some situations where we have doctors and lawyers that their mothers were domestics
Yeah.
because there was no money in the house, but yet that sacrifice was
made it.
made. So how do you again take a look at the family? How do you fill in the blanks? And you're saying is roll down the window, but isn't there something more than rolling down the window? You could be a mentor, couldn't you?
Yes, you can, and I try my best, which is, like I say, to make contact with the right people to get the job done is a problem.
Yes.
And sometimes I feel that the system per se don't want it to work, because here it is, like Mr. Johnson was saying, the program that we had going on in the prison, it used to work.
Sure.
We go to the school when they have problems and we solve the problem, but then they stop the program.
We have met with guys and we have brought in different groups of kids, children, that didn't have good communication with each other.
Right.
And we say, you know what? Bring them in.
Yeah.
We have brought them down to the facility and showed them these are your options.
Sure.
These are your options if you don't come together and understand, and you guys just need to talk and communicate to solve your problem, because sometimes the problems wasn't any major problems where these young men couldn't communicate with each other or get the problem settled, but a lot of times, as he said, the communication breakdown, and it's worse now with technology, because everybody there on the cell phone or the computer, so the one-on-one conversation is not happening. It's not. But we have seen in those programs, which was the program that we went to the school, and we
Sure.
try and mentor these young men.
Sure.
He can give you the experience that he have met since he came
Well-
out. How many of those guys have came to him and said, Mr. Lewis, I remember you.
Yes.
They're under a consent decree now. Coincidentally, I've got the director of prisons coming in here on Thursday, and we're going to be discussing this. And of course, it's always leans back to resources and this and that.
Yeah.
But however, the courts are not buying it. The same with the police department; they're under consent decrees.
Right.
So again, we got to do better than we're doing right now. So let's all take a break. We'll be back in a minute. You're on Caribbean Country 93.5. All right, and we are back again, and I hope you're enjoying eavesdropping on this conversation, because all of you have got a stake again to listen to these types of discussions, because the only way we're going to work our way out of a lot of these complicated issues, particularly in the crime area, is for all of us to roll up our shoulders and understand we are our brother's keepers. People can be rehabilitated, and the system itself, and Frankie clearly understands that once you are a convicted felon, in some cases you can't borrow money. When you go for a job interview, they take a look at your record and say, no, I want no part of you, and so on and so forth. So the system lends itself to be anti-rehabilitation, which really distresses me.
Definitely.
And again, I hired a couple of folks working for me when I was in the Senate like that, and again turned them around and was able to deal with that issue. So I picked up the pieces myself. But let's have this more as a workshop. I tend to dominate this because I want an
Right.
exchange between you guys. And
Sure.
again, so Frankie, why don't you take over?
And as you said about these programs, we had the Walk Detail Work Release Program, and I don't know the reason why they're not having these programs. I don't know why they're not functioning.
Right.
But as again, I said, Mr. Lewis started out on a walk detail.
Mm-hmm.
The work detail program is a program where the government benefits a lot
Sure.
because it's a program for government agency.
Sure.
And that back then we had nearly 70, 80 guys going out on
Right.
these work detail.
Right.
Agriculture will have 10, public safety will have 10, public work will have sometime 15 or more, and you name it. So he started out with the agriculture department on the work detail program,
Mm-hmm.
where the agency pays the Bureau of Correction $10 a day for each prisoner,
Okay, good.
full day work. And the prisoner get $5 a day.
All right, fine.
And the next 5 go back to the program that is running, actually
Mm-hmm.
doing all the facility and all that.
Subsidizes the program.
Everything.
Sure.
Helps with the program, with papers, material, whatever you need.
Sure.
And after that work detail program, Mr. Lewis, I guess, had a job interview pretty much.
Yeah.
Because once he was on that walk detail program,
They watch him.
they watched him and they saw his work ethics. They saw that he was somebody that was, well in tune with what was going on
Sure.
and was a hard, dedicated worker.
Wow.
So by the time he stepped out, he pretty much walked into a job within months.
Yeah.
He was hired by the Department of Agriculture.
I'll be darned.
And I'll let Lewis go ahead and tell that part of his, his
Well, I mean,
big change.
like everything in life, it wasn't easy.
Yeah.
I mean, I had my moments where I'll tell you a little story about myself, a little, thing like, I remember the last time that I went there, 'cause I used to go in on contract, and I went there, and when the contract was finished, they paid me, and they was like, thank you, and I went home and I cried.
Oh,
I was like,
sure.
wow, man, I trained everything, and I know I got this prison thing on my back. I wonder if they're going to hire me. And I prayed.
Yeah.
And I cried.
Sure.
And sure enough, God do answer prayers
Yes.
if you're really serious about what you want
Yeah.
in life.
Mhm.
And so this happened like a Friday, Saturday came, then Sunday I got a phone call.
Right.
Mr. Lewis, you're hired.
Wow.
And I mean, that was like the best thing ever.
Sure. Of course.
And so, like I say, I've been there ever since. And like I say, God is good to me. I mean, it's not easy.
No.
It's a rough road because I met people that like discourage me and tell me like hurtful
Resistant,
things to depress me. But I rise above all of that. What I
Well,
did is
they were
took the
trying
negative.
to. Well, they're trying to draw you back into
Right.
the lifestyle you're at. But one of the most important things, and I don't mean to interrupt you, but again, is self-esteem. If you lose that self-esteem as an individual, and again, you have a system that dooms you to potentially fail. You have to have a very special DNA in you to overcome this, because if you take a look out of 10 like yourself, maybe if you're lucky 3 to 4 will be able to rehabilitate, and the rest of them will be back in because again it's a lifestyle they're used to. So how do we fill up that vacuum, and how do we build the self-esteem in an individual in a hard, cold cut world?
The individual got to want it.
Yeah.
The individual got to want it.
And,
And if they don't want it, it's not going to work.
and that's why those programs are so important to continue building that self-esteem.
Right.
Once you get a guy in like the work detail and the work release program, those programs pretty much is a part of training that person for that life when they go back out in the community.
Sure.
The work release is where a gentleman could have a full-time job.
Yeah.
At one point, I had 20 guys working in the old Hess oil refinery.
Right.
And there was some responsibility that came with that, with these young men.
Mm-hmm.
They had to go to work. They had to prove that they're working with a check.
Yeah.
If they had children, they had to show that they're paying their child support.
Sure.
They had to pay 10% of their check to the Bureau of Correction.
Right.
And for most part, I make sure that I took each of those young men to open a bank book
Yep.
where they could start saving the money.
Right.
And it's that a real training process for some guy. I have a guy that worked in H&H. I retired in 2003. That guy's been working in H&H from about 2000.
Wow. Good.
And he's still there. And,
Sure.
and I won't call that young man name, but I don't think he had a job that long in his entire life, and he's much older than me.
Yes.
But he was someone that came back to prison. He did like about three runs in prison.
Sure.
And the third time he got on that program, and we started training. It's as you said earlier. Sometimes it might be a breakdown in the family, maybe hardship on a mother or father, maybe a single mom, and that's why the preventative program is so important to us in this community. Right there.
Sure.
That if we could start reaching out, helping these young men, young women from a young age, and that's why I said before, it's part of education too.
Sure.
The Department of Education could spot these children and see that they're not going in the right direction. And once you have these mentorship programs and these preventative programs, you can start redirecting them.
Sure.
And we need to start like yesterday.
Sure.
Or else we're going to have we pretty much lost a generation of young men.
Yeah.
And if we don't start doing these things, we're going to end up losing our next generation.
Well, that was what I was going to ask the two of you again, and you're correct. We probably at least two generations at this point. In other words, when you get to a certain point, like for instance, learning how to read by the time you're in fourth grade, these are the types of things that make it extremely awkward. And of course, then there are no alternatives. The other issue is, and I think you and I discussed it, going into the vocations is
Definitely.
critical. And they're laughing all the way to the bank. Now, if you're a plumber, you're an electrician, you're this or that, journeyman programs where, again, you can direct these youngsters into these areas where they have an ability to make a living. Otherwise, they're going to get seduced right back to the same stuff they're in.
Yeah, it's a revolving thing. And so, like I said, sometimes I wonder if the government really want it to change, because they is the one who could make the change.
I think you can answer that right now, okay? The bottom line is that he has identified it, and again, we're talking about Frankie Johnson. He, one way or another, he is going to scratch somebody to the point where they're going to get their attention, because, again, in that legislature, you have individuals that have been in the police department all the way to commissioners.
Yeah.
But I've never heard anybody quite like Frankie saying, okay, come on, what are we going to just give up? You know, what are we going to do with this thing? He will be able to put a practical application to theory. Let's us take another break. We'll be back in a minute. You're on Caribbean Country 93.5. And a pleasant good morning once again. And again, you can watch us on Facebook. That's the drill. We are streaming live, and you're on Caribbean Country 93.5. And I'm with Frankie Johnson, and also with Rupert Lewis. And Rupert is, a turnaround, exactly an example of what we want to do, and what Frankie Johnson is pushing for. One. To preventative and rehabilitation. We're going to be talking to an individual, I guess his name is Keith Benjamin, sometime in about another 5 minutes, but that is another story. Talk to me a little bit about him. We'll talk behind his back. How's that sound?
Definitely.
He probably is learning now. He probably knows me anyway.
He's as solid as they come out. And again, a story out of this wall. Keith Benjamin came to prison at a very young age.
Mm-hmm.
And when he first came to prison, he was upset with the system.
Yeah.
I mean, no kind of passion. He was just an angry young man.
What do you consider a young age?
Keith had to have been about 23, 24.
Oh, wow.
Around that. But the worst part about Keith's story was an innocent man in prison.
Yeah.
And when I first met him, he had this type of anger out of this world.
Yeah.
And we couldn't deal with Mr. Benjamin with that type of anger. We had sent him away.
Sure.
And I was in a committee that was selecting who to bring back home.
Yeah.
And when I saw Keith Benjamin's name, I said, no, don't bring this gentleman back. And they said, no, check your record, Frankie. I said, these officers can't deal with Keith Benjamin.
Yeah.
I'm talking about what I experienced with him in his early age and early time of his sentencing.
Sure.
At that time, I didn't know nothing about his case.
Okay.
Absolutely nothing. And they voted over me and they brought him back. And when he came down, I said, you know what? I'm taking this guy underneath my wings because
Right. Sure.
I knew him before we sent him away.
Right.
And I brought him to work in my office in the work detail work release program.
Mm-hmm.
And I started looking at him, watching his behavior.
Sure.
And Redfield, I saw day and night right in front of my eyes.
Sure.
I saw a total different person from when I met him in about 1984, 85 to when he came back home now in 2000.
Yeah.
And I pulled him in my separate office from the rest prisoners, and I said, I need to talk to you. And he said, what happened? I said, I want to let you know straight out. I was in a committee that was voting on which prisoners to bring back, and when your name came up, I voted against you.
Mm-hmm.
And I said to him, I knew who you was back then.
Sure.
You're not the same person.
Yeah.
And he started to sit down and tell me his story about why he was so angry.
Yeah.
At the time, he was angry because he was an innocent prisoner in prison. He did some 20-something years.
Yeah.
Well, how did that happen? Because I had a situation where, again, I dealt in Washington to get an individual out of a prison, again, in California, where the criminal justice system, in some cases, is not fair at all, particularly to those that are minorities.
Yes, sir.
But here was a situation where a young lady was in an automobile and her boyfriend stopped to see somebody, and obviously he wanted to bump this individual off. She did not know anything about it. He pleaded guilty, and of course she did not have a lawyer. She went to jail. He was in for 6 months for that, and she was in for 20 years.
And that's why I said to people, I could never support the death penalty because they're innocent people under circumstances, as you said, don't have the right legal representation, could cost you your life in prison.
Right. Well, you have a lawyer that you're appointed. There's no interest in it in many cases. I'm not saying all lawyers are that way. But again, the criminal justice system, from the point of which you're arrested, and you have seen the Black Lives Matter issue in the United States, this is basically a community of color. But however, your biggest problem here is black on black.
Yes.
Exactly.
In other words, you blacks are putting your knees on somebody else's neck.
Yeah.
So how do you get around that? And you are in the area of rehabilitation dealing with that anger, like from this individual, that obviously in one way or another he was not treated justly.
And he made such a 360-degree turnaround at Redfield that he one day he was an art and craft guy, did a lot of art and craft work, and
Very talented.
we normally very talented. I wanted to take him to the AgriFest fair because normally the prisoners who did craft was allowed to go to this program.
I got you.
To the fair.
Sure.
And the warden said to me, Frankie, this guy is doing life.
Yep.
You can't take him out. And I said, but he have all of this craft that's going to be down to the fair.
Wow.
He said, Frankie, you want to put your job on the line for this man? And I said, yes, Redfield.
Sure.
I signed a letter putting my job on the line to take Mr. Keith Benjamin to the fair because I saw who he was.
Yeah.
I knew who he was on this go-round.
Yeah.
And the rest is history. After that, everyone saw who Keith Benjamin was. They saw that this man was pretty much an innocent person. And God bless Governor Turnbull, he gave him a pardon.
Sure.
But today, as we speak, the proof is in the pudding. Keith Benjamin is the head of maintenance for the legislature today.
Sure.
So,
He's the head of maintenance.
Yeah.
So it proves, that and he will tell you the story. He said when he went to the mainland, he always walked with a shank, a weapon.
Of course.
And he said some elders came to him and started asking him, why you got this kind of anger? And he explained to them that he's an innocent man in prison. And the elders said, well, you're not
How
going to
did that happen? Without getting into too much detail, bottom line is.
Well, there's still some of his co-defendants still in prison, and from his story, his vehicle was used in a crime.
Yes.
And they arrested, I think it was 3, possible 4 individuals. But he was not one of them at the time when the crime happened. So when they couldn't find the third person,
pick him up.
Pick him up. So now he's an accomplice.
he's like,
Oh, my
no,
God.
he doesn't know nothing. He can't say nothing. He's just, it's his car that was used in this particular crime. And he had a young man that was willing to testify from his story to me.
Sure.
I'm only going based on what he said to me. But the young man was like about 14 years old. A guy he used to wash his car
you're
for
gonna
him.
be kidding.
And when he tried to get this guy to come testify, the government did not allow this individual to testify on his behalf.
Yeah.
So no, he was stuck in something that he had no knowledge about.
Yeah.
But he gave up some 20-something plus years of his life. But what I'm telling you, what I saw day and night, after those elders said to him, look, if you continue walking with a shank, you're going to only dig yourself deeper into this
Well,
facility.
you're either going to be 6 feet under yourself, or again, you're going to
get more. You're going to come
sure,
in
get more trouble. Let's you and I take a break. When we come back, we'll
Definitely.
see if we can get Keith on the line.
We should be able
You're
to
on
get him.
Caribbean Country 93.5. All right, and we are back, and you're on Caribbean Country 93.5, and again, we are on Facebook, and this will be rebroadcast tonight between 6 and 8, and we've got Keith Benjamin on the line. Keith, are you there?
Yes, good morning.
Good morning, Keith. How you doing?
Good morning, sir.
I'm
You're
good.
you're here with a bunch of scoundrels. We're all scoundrels, okay? Talk to me a little bit about your situation. You probably know me anyway. Of course, you were not in the legislature working down there when I was there. I don't think so, because I
No.
go back to BC before Christ, okay?
Right.
In any
Right.
event, talk to me a little bit about the process you went through. And we're going to get you on again, hopefully sometime soon, because this is something that I want to follow, particularly with Frankie Johnson, with reference to prevention and rehabilitation. Talk to me about yourself a little bit.
Okay, first of all, I want to say good morning and thank you for giving me this opportunity.
No, thank you.
As you know, my name is Keith Mauli Benjamin, also known as Black Pete. And I was convicted for a crime I didn't commit in 1981, a murder.
Wow.
And I was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole.
Mm-mm.
And it was a rough journey, and as Frankie know, in the early part of my time, my anger, and just couldn't believe how they, to be locked up. I was the age of 23. And through that struggle, I started out at Golden Grove, and I was later transshipped to the mainland,
Yes.
which was a blessing. At that time, I didn't realize it was a blessing. I grew, I got matured, I began studying more. I'm a graduate of Charlotte High School,
Okay.
but I went on further to study, get a degree while I was incarcerated. I went through a lot of programs to get my mind, because one of the dynamics, and I really support, the prevention measures.
Sure.
Many times, we as young people are going through a lot of different psychological issues,
Mm-hmm.
and it leads to that direction. So that's time for next discussion. But I went in there, utilized that, find myself, and continue to work on my case.
Sure.
Going to the library, studying, and I want to the former Governor Turnbull and so many more. George Hodge, my
Yeah,
family,
I believe
my
he
brother,
pardoned you, yeah.
Sonny Jackson. There's so many people that I can name that been there praying, keeping me going. And I was not partying, I could be commuted in 2007.
Sure.
Why? Under the ground, I was able to new discover evidence,
Sure.
and also my prison development. And the former governor reviewed that and with a board, and
Sure.
let them commuted my sentence
Yeah.
in 2007, and I got out, and I got a job at the legislature.
Sure.
As you know, I thank the Senate President at that time,
Mm-hmm.
and all the senators that gave me that second chance.
Sure.
Not easy getting a second chance.
No. I mean, but
Give
what,
a second chance. Though.
Keith, what I wanted to do is get you back to, again, the anger. How do you deal, knowing, again, that the criminal justice system, again, whether it's here or in the United States, sometimes it's even more complicated in the United States because, again, we're talking about black and brown people are treated a lot different in the United States. but here
Right.
it's black on black. But talk to me again, how in God's name, knowing that, again, either some technicality or some bullshit, you end up being in jail for life? My God, I wouldn't be able to handle the anger.
Yeah, that's rough.
I mean, it's a good question. First of all, I got to give God. I got to give
Yeah.
a power greater than myself.
Sure.
Because it's hard to explain and say, because when you locked in cell and you going through that, and so many times you wonder if you will ever get out. Sometimes I said, I wish I was guilty, even though I wasn't guilty.
Yeah.
And I just went to a lot of classes. I went to the church. We formed the Rastafarian movement where we had music, radio music to keep,
Yeah.
to answer the question, I went to psychology classes, and I just continue to pray and just keep going within myself and trying to get a balance. Because one of the my setting that I had give myself, I said, one day I'm going to be free. One day. Because I'm innocent.
Well, you had to do
I don't
that,
care what
yeah.
somebody says, I'm going to be innocent. And I said to myself, one thing I want when I get out, I want a peace of mind so I can enjoy life.
Sure.
Because nobody don't want a miserable person around them. And that's what I want to keep my sanity and to keep my mind. Because sometimes you find in them situations,
Well.
you find you want to run away with without resting.
Keith, you've got a stronger back than I do. Listen, I'm going to have to let you go. First of all, let's
We gotta do
be
this again,
completely
Keith.
straight.
Yeah.
You are an exception to the rule. But what, again, Frankie Johnson wants to do is make a lot of exceptions to the rules. And
Right.
in the context of when he is elected, I'm not going to say if he's elected, when he's elected, I can't endorse anybody. You understand that, right?
Right.
You're talking to somebody, again, that completely is empathetic because I ended up getting a pardon for somebody who was in an automobile at the wrong time, and again, somebody else committed the murder, and he pleaded, and she went to jail for 20 years. But
Wow.
you're talking about the justice system. You talk about anger. In any event, Frankie, why don't you close this thing off? And again, Keith, I want you to come back on sometime in the near future.
Can I say one more thing?
Go ahead.
Sure.
Also, I wrote a book called Blessed to be Free After Wrongful Imprisonment.
Yes.
I have also wrote that book, so anyone might be interested to contact Frankie Johnson, and he knows to get in touch with me.
Yeah, you have a
And it
book
gives
here
a little more
written.
insight.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
Well,
my holy. Everything cool or what?
I got Rambo here with me.
Yeah, man. I was listening to you.
Yeah.
well, when you
Look,
come,
Keith,
when
we'll
you
set
come
this
back,
up again for you to
when
get
you
more
come
time.
back, Keith will make you a talk show host. Okay, you on the side convention. Okay. Again, some
Yeah.
closing thoughts of Frankie on your part.
Definitely, I thank you for this opportunity for some of these young men to show that
Sure.
these preventative programs can work. But what we really would like to do is to make sure that we catch them before they reach the prison, before they commit a crime.
Sure.
So we need more programs before
Right.
they commit a crime.
Sure.
And those are some of the type of legislation that I would definitely want to pass. I would want to make sure that we put more money to
Sure.
these
Resources,
areas,
sure.
resources,
That's right.
whether it's vocational training, whatever like that,
Right.
to make sure that we change the dynamic of crime in the territory.
Sure.
We cannot
That's
continue going down this road. And
I agree.
in some case, for those that fall between the crack, we have to make sure that they're prepared to come back out and be a productive citizen in our
That's
community.
right. Sure.
We
That's
can't just warehouse guys anymore. That doesn't work. Once you start warehousing, all you're going to do is repeated offender,
Well, you're better off spending the money up front
Up-
than
and
on the tail end
exactly.
of it. And again, it makes
That's
sense.
why my story is preventative measures.
Well, what
And-
you do is you shame your colleagues in there to put up or shut up
Well,
with reference to them having this, again, this hopefully a sincere outward manifestation of supporting again their black brothers and sisters that end up
Definitely.
in these situations. So you know how to do that. Give
Definitely.
them some therapy.
Right.
Definitely will do my best, Alan. I
Right.
really would.
Good.
And that's what it's all about, this preventative measure.
And Keith, I want to thank you very much. And again, you're
You're
invited
welcome.
to come up here in person. Because
Yeah.
I'm going to continue this process. And again, this is not just to get him elected.
But
This
to
is
do
to
it
put
right.
another side to the story for a community to understand that if we're going to solve this, we got to do it all together.
All together, yes.
And,
That's right.
We got to
That's
reinforce our families, our
And I
family
want to be a
units.
part. I want to be a part. I feel
Well,
I
you
have
are.
a responsibility in this solution. I have
Well-
a responsibility, just like Rupert knows who's there, Rambo. We have a responsibility.
Definitely.
Thank you very much, Guy.
You're a humble man, and again, Rupert, thank you very much for being here. You're a delight, and we're going to
Thank you.
continue this. And out there, I hope you again were eavesdropping on this conversation. If this wasn't a wake-up call, yoo-hoo, smell the coffee. There's a way we can work our way.
And don't
through
forget,
this.
on November 3rd, Franklin Johnson, number 6 on the ballot.
Number 6, okay.
Definitely. Thank you very much.
I knew he
Been a
was going to
pleasure.
get that in.
I had to get it
In any event, they're not tearing your signs down, are they?
in. Not yet.
They know better.
Hopefully
No,
not.
they won't.
Hopefully not. I've been a good boss into this
Sorry,
community.
they tear
and
your
intend to
signs down,
continue
you'll bring the
being
boys out. In any event, folks, God bless each and every one of you. God bless the United States Virgin Islands. And of course, God bless the greatest nation on this earth, the United States of America. We'll see you tomorrow.